And can they begin a winning run tomorrow in the North London derby, which you can see from 4:30 live on Sky Sports Premier League? Tim, let's talk about the man we just heard from. Will mark his 100th Premier League appearance for the Gunners tomorrow in that game. We've talked about Bukayo Saka over the course of the last few seasons as being Arsenal's most important player. In terms of players who can somehow drag them across the line, end this long wait for a title, is the man we just heard from right now the most important player in doing that?
Yeah, 100%. I want 11 Declan Rices, please. And I think if they did have 11 Declan Rices, they would have already won this title.
Have you seen him in goal?
He's amazing. Forget where he plays. It's just his drive. If he doesn't play well, you make players around him better. And I believe he's authentic. I believe what he says. You know, there's no acting there. I just think it's tough for him at the moment, and it's going to be tough. But I think Declan's absolutely right there. They have to have a positive mindset. The 5 points clear. They would have took that at the beginning of the season. Forget what's gone. Forget that they drew 2-2 with Wolves, the worst team, nearly in the history of the Premier League, with a 2-goal lead, and they throw it away. They have to forget all of that. They have to really.
How do you though forget that? As I mentioned right at the start, it's only 2 weeks ago. Merce was sat here talking about that 9-point lead at the end of the Saturday show.
It's gone. And why people? Because I've been in that position myself. The reason why people ask you about you going to bottle it? Is it about the mentality? It's because you're in it. People are not asking Liverpool players about there because they're not in it. They're not asking Chelsea players because they're not in it. Not Tottenham players, not Man United.
So you want to be
players.
asked those questions?
Of course you want to, because you have to embrace that. You just say, we're asking them questions and we love it because that means we're in it. The unfortunate thing is for Arsenal, they've been in there for the last 3 years and they've come up second. So everyone's going to point the finger and say they do it again. There's going to have to be a time when they do get over the line. And if they do get over the line, they could be a real threat. But it gets harder. If you was not to do it this year, it will get harder again next year because other teams will get better. And I think they've had a fantastic lead. Of course they have. But forget about it now. It's a clean slate. I hear Mikel Arteta talking about this might be the game we need, a North London derby. But it might be also the game that Tottenham need, an Igor Tudor. Yeah.
It's massive, simply huge for both sides, and we'll look at it in more detail in a short while. But Clinton, reflecting on what happened at Wednesday night on Molineux, they're 2-0 up, and then dramatically right at the end, they leave Molineux with a point. We were arguing that the point against Brentford away, the game before in the Premier League, was a good point. This was definitely not a good point given the position they were in. So how then, picking up what Tim was saying there, do they make sure that there aren't mental scars that develop from this game?
See, it's getting over the line, and Tim would be the best because obviously he's won the league, so he's just explained it to you brilliantly. But it's about getting over the line for them at the moment. And they're making big mistakes. They weren't making these mistakes earlier on in the season where he don't need to come David Raya. Gabriel's going to deal with that and just head it. And you can see there's
Are you seeing a nervous?
Yeah, there is a nervous. They are nervous because they don't know how to get over the line at the moment, and they're nervous. But they're still ahead. It's still in their hands. They need to stop panicking.
But it's February.
That's what. But we're talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. So they're going to listen to noises. Even though you say, all right, we're going to stick to what's happening in the camp, you're still going to listen to it. Look, you see one of the coaches arguing with one of the Wolves bench. Everyone's in their emotions at the moment because they know they're so close, Arsenal. But these kind of results where you're 2-0 up and you're comfortable in the game and you can see so late in the game, it's frustrating. But they've got to stick together. And that interview we've seen from Declan Rice, I do think he's the most important player for them.
Should he be captain?
It's a listen, in my opinion, he should be captain. Odegaard is the captain. When you go onto that pitch, it doesn't matter if Tim's got the captain on arm, you can still be the captain. You can still be the captain. And he leads in different ways. And if you're not doing it, Declan Rice will speak about this is frustration from Jesus. They've just conceded and he's frustrated with Mascherano at the end of the game. They're just frustrated at the Arsenal. Have to keep their emotions intact. And Mikel Arteta is the man to do that at the moment.
But if you're looking on as Manchester City, we shouldn't forget Aston Villa because they win later today. They go 5 points behind us. They draw level on points with City ahead of their game later this evening against Newcastle from 8 o'clock. But if you're looking on and seeing those scenes at the end, you're seeing a fragility, aren't you? You're seeing an opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. And, when you listen to Pep Guardiola, he just says we're just focusing on ourselves. We're just focusing on getting our job done. And they've got that experience. They've got that know-how. The manager that's done it. Yes, you can say some of the squad haven't been there. But the fact that Pep Guardiola's been there, that the club's been there, they know how to get over the line. So, yeah, of course, you can imagine there will be huge pressure, huge emotion, whether that's the fans in the ground, whether that's the players, the manager. Because it's been a long time, hasn't it, since they've won the trophy. They've come close so many times. So now it's a case of we just have to get it done. And that game against Wolves, I think, the fact that you can see there, can't you, the Opta.
Is Opta all right?
I was going to say don't ask Mers, but
I just think no, and it's just going to be close, isn't it? That's the thing. There's going to be so many more twists and turns to this. So, we can't overreact to one result. I think one week we'll say, oh, it's definitely Arsenal's. The next week it's Manchester City's. We just don't know. And there will be games. Yes, they've got to play each other, but there'll be other games where they could potentially slip up.
And Boydie, what we've seen historically, particularly you remember the Manchester United years under Sir Alex Ferguson, they would always get a result somehow. They were ruthless in their pursuit of Premier League title after Premier League title. How do Arsenal discover some ruthlessness now between now and the end of May?
I mean, looking at them, especially defending on like they're too eager for me. You look at, I think they were praised so much for their their defensive stability at the start of the season. You look at it now and the bodies getting thrown in front. Gabriel wants to go and header it. David Ray's coming out his goals. I don't think he needs to. It's as if they're trying to make sure that everything's done properly. And when you do that, you end up maybe making mistakes when you're lunging into things, when you're making decisions that.
And that's born out here, isn't it? Because first 20 games, points per game 2.4.
Simon, we were listening. If you go back to the start of the season as well, everybody was talking about Chelsea's record was in doubt. That clean sheet record, the amount of goals. I mean, they're falling off a cliff in terms of that defensive unit, but I think it comes from further up the pitch as well. They're not creating the same amount. They're definitely not taking the chances that are being created. There's a lot of noise around Arsenal, and you kind of get the feeling that this will just be suiting Manchester City now. There's a lot of noise around Arsenal. There has been for a number of months now. There's an expectation there now, and they're going to have to deliver. They're going to have to find a way to get over. They've been nearly men the last few seasons. They're going to have to find a way to go over the line.
And is key to getting over the line, because you look at goal scorers in the Premier League for them. It's only Gyökeres who's above 5 for them at the moment.
Yeah.
Kai Havertz, we're waiting to see if he's going to be fit enough to play in the North London derby. It sounded reasonably positive for Arteta tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is he potentially the key going forward to keep him fit? Because his influence on the side is huge, isn't it?
Yeah. I think from open play, I think he's got the guile to open up defences, in tight areas. A lot of teams play against him. We don't know how, with Igor Tudor's side, how he's going to go about it tomorrow. But I would imagine he would sit quite deep and try and counter-attack. So there's not going to be a lot of room to operate. You're going to need players who can operate in tight areas with disguised passing.
You see Saka in that number 10 role again?
Well, the only reason I don't is because Eze scored a hat-trick in a reverse fixture. So I think possibly Eze plays.
Does he bring him in?
But Saka,
purely on what he did in the last North London derby. I mean, I think
some
Palace last season got a couple against Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a barren spell. Of course he has. And Eze would argue, but I've not had a run of games, really. A run of starts. He's come off the bench and he's failed to impact the game. I think if Eze plays, he plays in the 10, and then Saka will play instead of Madueke on the right-hand side. But, I mean, it's a good problem for Mikel to have, isn't it? We're talking about we haven't got a problem with the squad. Mm-hmm. They've ticked that box. They've addressed that from last couple of seasons. So the only problem they've got is in between their ears at the moment, and that's the biggest problem. And they need to get over the line mentally. They need to do it. You're capable of doing it. They are capable of doing it, but it's all right talking about it. You just need to get on with it and really use some focus of getting there. And like I say, if they do get over the line, they can be a force to reckon with. But it's going to get harder and harder the more years they go and they finish up the bridesmaids.
When you look at that's key. For me, when you've not got strikers or forward players that are killers right now. We've seen it in the past where it seems to be Saka goes in a run and he'll score goals. Gyökeres can do it. Trossard, Martinelli. There is goals in the team, but they've all seemed to have dried up at the same time. And you look at, even the corner kicks and from set plays, they were a threat. For me, Kai Havertz could be the difference between now and the end of the season. And I say it because there's no doubt that for Mikel Arteta, Gyökeres, he wants him as his number 9. Gabriel Jesus is there. But when you look at Saka, Eze, Martinelli, Trossard, whoever plays, they want to dribble with the ball. And if you're a striker and your movement, you want to get away from defenders quickly, you need somebody who's just going to go on the ball, 1-2 touch and move it, pass it quick. And Kai Havertz does that because it's going to defence are going to sit in against them now. They already have. It's going to be a lot tighter. And Kai Havertz, for me, could be the man to unlock that. But when I look at Saka and people, it's dribble. They want to make things happen. They're very good.
Well, he's right. What he's saying about Havertz.
I just feel as if it's something different.
No, I agree with you. Havertz. I totally agree. They do miss Havertz, but Eze can do that. That's why you brought him in. When you play against,
there's a lack of trust there.
That's why I think it's a lack of trust when they don't have the ball, because we always know he's not good when they don't have the ball. When they're on the ball, he's a fantastic player. I think Boydie's right. When they don't have the ball, it's what he's tracking back his light. But if you're playing against a team who's got a low block, that's why you brought him in, to go and unlock the passes like that. So obviously he's sitting there frustrated.
That's the opposite, because if you look at Pep Guardiola, he will throw his attacking players on the pitch and they'll go and create and take players on, where Mikel Arteta's probably a little more... he doesn't... I mean... Obviously, maybe the handbrake's on, but he's got good players to go and do it. I think we might have, because of when you look at Arsenal, the goals they've scored, and they deserve to be spoken about as they are. An attacking threat, but he is more, defensive minded, and that could end up coming back to bite him in the back.
Marino's a huge blow for him.
You
know, he's a goal threat. Especially set pieces and from open play. Because when teams sit back, you can just lump it into the box. He's a big threat. I think he's got a poacher's instinct. I think going back to Eze, when Eze was brought in, when he rehearsed, when he's playing for the QPRs and when he's playing for the Palaces, teams would come out against them. Now teams do not come out against Arsenal. They sit back. So that, I'm not saying he can't, but that space where he operates in behind the opposition midfield has got tighter and tighter. It needs to find a way. It's no good in coming this side of the midfield, because the midfield players can do that.
But that's where good players adapt to him. That's where good top players adapt, because they realise that there's not space to go and dribble, and you've got to move it 1 and 2 touch to create those opportunities.
Well, 2 of Eze's last 3 Premier League starts, he's been off at half-time, so clearly at the moment Arteta doesn't have full faith in him. Will he start tomorrow? Brilliant, of course, in the first North London derby of the season without hat-trick. Let's just look, Sue, at what is coming up for Arsenal in terms of fixtures. We, of course, will talk more about the North London derby that's coming up tomorrow live on Super Sunday. But I'm drawn to those 3 matches. March the 22nd, we've got the League Cup final at Wembley. Then after the international break, they've got Bournemouth at home. And then it's Manchester City away in the league again. In terms of the direction of this title race come the end of the season, that run of 3 games, but particularly that meeting at Wembley, how big an impact does that have on where this title goes? Yeah,
and you could look at it both ways, couldn't you? You could look at it, well, if Arsenal go and win that, obviously that's then the confidence and the momentum to then go and play them away from home and try and beat Manchester City there. So those 3 games will be key, but I think you could probably say a case for all of them, couldn't you? You could say a case for the North London derby. How is that going to, play out in terms of a new manager? It is the North London derby. So you could go through a lot of those games and say that, but I think the big picture with Arsenal is, like, over the last few months they haven't been good enough, have they? They've not been good enough to pull away from Manchester City, which we've kept saying that they've got that distance. Can they actually go and pull away? And I suppose the perfect game for them to get back on track, because they have been in a blip, to get back on track will be the North London derby, see how that is. And they've got the squad, Tim said it, they've got the squad, they've got the quality of players. It's now just about, it's that belief and that mentality of doing it. But yeah, there's a lot of games there you could look at and go, well, you've got teams fighting at the bottom end of the table, but the Manchester City game, of course, the final and the league is what you're drawn to.
Sue's right. The final is, for me, I've said it many times, it's the final. If they can get over the line, Arsenal in that final, you make them favourites. If they don't get over the line,
you could land a massive psychological blow.
100%, yeah, 100%, because then you play each other 2 games later, but that is the big game. Win that, and then Arsenal could go on and win the league. If they don't, I think Man City will win it. And what we were saying earlier is, if Man City go ahead, I don't think Arsenal catch them.
Boydie, we were talking to Clinton yesterday on the team's meeting call ahead of today, which we've not seen you on yet so far. There's plenty of chances for you to join us, but he was very confident.
I had a charity event on. Charity raising money.
Well done.
That's good.
Well done.
Good.
I'll come on it next week.
OK, I'll hold you to that. I don't think you're on the show next week. We're getting diverted. Just on the game tomorrow. I mean, we'll come on and talk about Tottenham. We have nothing to go on at the moment. We've not seen a Tottenham Hotspur side under Igor Tudor until tomorrow at 4:30. What do you expect to happen tomorrow from an Arsenal point of view? Do you agree with Clinton that you'd expect them to win fairly comfortably?
Well, I'll never agree with Clinton, that's for sure. But listen, it's not going to be easy. I mean, a derby game is never easy. You're going to have to fight to win the battles we start with. But I do think Arsenal, they've had the upper hand in that fixture now for a number of years. They're a strong team. We keep speaking, and I get it, and we've all been guilty of it. We keep speaking about the squad depth that Arsenal have got. But you get the feeling that it's now coming down to that starting 11 need to start producing. They need to start getting results, and what an opportunity it is to go and do that against the rivals tomorrow.
Mikel Arteta's work at Arsenal is being viewed in an even brighter light after the recent coaching shakeups elsewhere. With Chelsea parting ways with Enzo Maresca and Manchester United moving on from Ruben Amorim, the contrast is hard to miss. Arsenal has kept moving forward under Arteta, giving him time through difficult stretches, and now seeing the payoff as the club pushes again in the Premier League title race. It also raises a bigger question about strategy. While Chelsea and United are changing direction again, Arteta has been in place for more than 6 years, outlasting a long list of managers across those 2 clubs in that span. That stability has become part of the story, and it was a major talking point on the Seeing Red podcast with Tom Canton and John Cross. Beyond reacting to Amorim's dismissal and breaking down wins over Aston Villa and Bournemouth, plus Manchester City's loss to Chelsea, the conversation kept returning to one core idea: structure. Not just who is the coach, but how much power that coach has, and whether the club is built to support a long-term project. Cross pointed to Arsenal as a rare example of patience turning into real strength. He argued that Arsenal's willingness to back Arteta through the messy early phases helped create the stable position they're in now, and that this kind of time and support investment is what can turn a club into something truly solid. Canton's response was sharp and honest. Arteta's arc, he said, has almost become a problem for other clubs, because it tempts them to keep coaches they probably shouldn't. But at the same time, it's still the best example of what can happen when you hire the right person and actually give them time. And that time wasn't smooth. The discussion highlighted how Arsenal could easily have pulled the plug early. 2 8th-place finishes, then 5th, missing out on the Champions League, and a Europa League semi-final exit to Unai Emery's Villarreal. Any of those moments could have pushed a club into panic mode. Instead, the argument is that Arsenal recognized the bigger reality. Arteta didn't have the resources to compete at the required level right away. The squad needed a rebuild. The roster needed to be refreshed. That's where the comparison to Chelsea and United becomes even more pointed. The podcast suggested that recruitment and decision-making structure are often what determine whether a coach survives. If signings don't land, results suffer. And if a coach doesn't have enough influence, or the club isn't aligned behind a clear plan, it becomes much easier for things to collapse. In other words, giving time only works if the coach is empowered to shape the team in a way that matches the vision. Cross also emphasized that Arteta's situation stood out because he pushed to be a true manager, not just a head coach. The idea is simple. Top coaches want a real say in the build, and they want the club to match what they were promised when they took the job. The discussion even pointed to how Arteta survived a low moment, like the home loss to Burnley, because the club stayed behind him. And in that period, with fan pressure affected by the COVID-era environment, Arsenal were able to hold their nerve instead of reacting emotionally. Meanwhile, the big unknowns now shift back to Chelsea and Manchester United. Who replaces Amorim? And how will the next chapter look at Chelsea? The answers may come sooner than people expect. But for Arsenal, the reality stays the same. They're stable, they're moving forward, and they're still in the title chase, while others are starting over again. And that contrast can shape how people judge every manager in the league. Because when two massive clubs hit the reset button again, it forces the same question Cross raised on the show. Is the quick switch actually fixing the problem, or just delaying the real work? The bigger takeaway from the discussion is that time isn't a magic solution by itself. It only becomes valuable when the club's structure supports the plan. And when the coach has the influence to push the squad in the direction he believes it needs to go. That's why the distinction between head coach and manager kept coming up. The podcast point is that if a coach is expected to own the results, he usually wants a meaningful say in the decisions that shape those results. And if he doesn't get that, patience alone won't save him. That's also where Arteta's early struggles get reframed. Those finishes and setbacks could have become a reason to panic. Instead, they became evidence of why alignment matters, because Arsenal chose to treat them as part of a build, not a final verdict. And once the squad was reshaped the way the club believed it needed to be, the results started to reflect that long-term approach. So the repercussions aren't just about Arsenal looking stable, it's about how stability changes your margin for error. When you don't reset every year, you're not constantly starting from zero. You're building on decisions, learning from setbacks, and keeping a clearer identity. For Chelsea and Manchester United, the immediate consequence is obvious. They're changing direction again, which means the next appointment carries even more weight. Because every new coach isn't just judged on results. He's judged on whether the club is finally giving him the structure and authority that the role demands. That's why the question at the end matters so much. Who will replace Amorim? And how will Liam Rosenior do at Chelsea? Because those answers will test the exact theme the show kept returning to. Time, support, structure, and control. And for Arsenal, it's a different kind of pressure. Stability doesn't guarantee trophies, but it does keep you in the fight longer. And right now, while others restart, Arsenal get to stay focused on what they're already doing, chasing the Premier League title.